Hello everyone, my name is Nabit Madan and I have around 14 plus of years of experience in different technologies. Uh, the primary reason for having this course is to help everyone who wants to start with OData, because wherever we see that OData is being used in most of the places. That's why this OData for beginner course idea came into existence. So in this course what we are planning to cover is what is OData, of course, what is the not only the definition, how it actually works. And once we understand what is OData, then we look into something like, okay, how it is linked to REST, right? Somewhere it is linked to REST, right? And then once we understand at a very high level that okay, this is OData, this is REST, then we start into its nitty gritties. What is a service, what is a resource, what are the different query options. And once we understand them, then we go directly into the details of how do we make database modifications or different operations, right, in OData. And then we will look at some examples of how do we play around with it. Overall, this course will be more of a practical one as compared to a theoretical one, so we will be doing it together. Okay, so starting with our first topic, what is OData. So before I actually go there, it is very important for us to understand how does the interaction occurs in the web world, right? Now in our traditional world, what we had was we had a database, and then there was a this front end. It can be VB or anything. I'm talking about typical traditional one. You used to fire your select, update, insert, and other queries, right? So though these front end were tightly coupled, right? For example, in SAP you have your GUI logo and GUI thing, right? And so these were tightly coupled. But now how things happen in this web world is, on what you see. For example, when you open any website, what you see is we called it as a client, okay? And whatever interactions you have, for example, you are registering yourself, you are logging in, you are trying to create something, those all interactions are happening with the server. So it's a client server architecture. Normally what server has is your database, your other servers, Apache, whatever, it can be any, right? So so it is basically one is a server side. Whatever you see, primarily the browsers, is a client side. So as soon as you register somewhere, you enter some data, right? And you say submit, right? It goes to the backend, the request, right? And once the server does its processing, it stores the data in database. It can be SQL, uh, Oracle, HANA, any database, right? SQL Server, whatever, and it gives back a response, right? So now you are sending a request, you're getting a response. So that this kind of is how it works in the whole web world, right? Now, important thing to understand here is that in our traditional world also we were doing select, insert, update, delete, right? And there was a syntax, there were rules, right? Remember these rules, right? So there was a clear cut definition of how it is going to interact with the backend. For example, in .NET you used to use ODBC to make a connection to the backend, and then fetching the data. There is a proper syntax, right? So how it has to be done in this client server architecture, right? There has to be a proper syntax, proper way, right, of talking to the backend. How do we send a request, how do we request something, how do we get a response, whether it is an error or whether it is in success request or a failed one, all also need a format, right? And so this whole a way of how this client will interact with the server via a proper format, right? And where you will clearly define how request will be like and how a response will be like. So these standards are nothing but those standards are set by the OData. Imagine this thing, there are no standards, there is no existing way of in how this client to server interaction will happen. If there is no uniform way, then every application will work in its own way and it will be very tough to extend it, very tough to understand it, very tough for those protocols to understand that how they, whether it is a create operation, whether it is a delete operation, whether it is a, so it gets tough. So OData has actually has made this operation pretty simple and straightforward for us. So, OData is nothing but it's in short is for uh, Open Data Protocol, right? So it kind of defines the standards, that route the rules, that how an interaction will happen between the client and the server, as we have seen here, right? So okay, now we understand OData, right? At a very high level, that how it is playing, what it is a protocol, which it is more likely, sometimes people refer to it to as SQL for the web, like we have SQL for our databases, the same way it is SQL for the web, right? So now we know this is a protocol. So if it is a protocol, then what is REST? Okay. So, let's have a look at understand at a high level what REST is and what role does it play in shaping or how it is linked to OData. Okay, so REST is a short form of representational uh, state transfer. Okay, so it's nothing but it is an architecture, right? Architecture style and which actually set the standards which are kind of implemented by OData protocol. So what kind of a different standards it sets is something like, for example, we'll have a separation between client and server. Okay, so by it means is that you can have an independent client. You can change the client code anytime without affecting the server, and same goes for service and servers and vice versa, right? And so it's more likely that the client you can change your UIs irrespective of impacting the backend. So UIs can change, backend is same, or you can change the backend without impacting the front end. So it's vice versa. So that is number one, right? Number two is mm, important is that what is important is the statelessness, right? So for example, if you make one request from client to server, right? In REST, in case it is following this REST architecture, so one request one, response one, right? Then request two, response two. So during these two times, these two different requests, the system will not remember anything what it has stored, right? What the previous request was, what future request was there. So it's a statelessness. You give me a request, I give you a response, irrespective of whatever is there, right? Then one of the another important thing is how do we make a request is I said is in your request you have header and you have your payload or body, whatever you want to call it, right? So in OData, which clearly defines how it is going to be. Now here, apart from this request header and body, what we have something is called as verbs. Okay, verbs are nothing. those are like create, read, update, delete we have in database. So same where we have is get, post, put, and delete, right? So it's like you are kind of get is like a selection, post is normally it is creation, you can of course update it, put is modification, and then you have delete is of course we know. So these verbs define uh, kind of what operations can be done, right? And then basically normally in a header you define that what kind of if you have any token, what kind of content you are sending, right? What kind of a response you're accepting, whether it is a JSON and all. So at a very higher level, so REST is more towards architecture, right? There are other criteria also. There are other parameters of the architecture side, but these are most important one, right? And then its implementation is being done by OData protocol, okay? And where we understood how this client and server works, right? So REST is nothing but an architecture style. So now we have understood what OData is, what is REST. I think enough of theory has already happened. It makes sense to actually start playing around with some of the OData, right? Where while playing around we will understand very important concepts. One is entities. One is we will understand about resources. What is a resource, right? Slowly we are going to dig into the OData terminology. Then we'll talk about queries, we'll talk about metadata, and on and on. Okay, so let's just then I will what I will do is we'll move on to next straight away to the simple OData service, and from there by using practical we'll understand things. So now let's have time for some action, right? So this OData.org is a site which is where you can see all the related information about different OData standards, OSS standards, and then you can look at all the resources, tools, and everything, even tutorials also. And then I will use one more tool which is I'll introduce you to later. But before that, maybe let me Auditor Northwind, yes. Let me first start by some action and then we'll see. Okay. So in our in if you remember that we have in our typical database different tables, right? And we perform operations on them, right? But here in this case, if you look at this, first let's look at this whole URL, which is services.odata.org. v2 is a version. As things keep evolving, so does OData keeps evolving. This Northwind is nothing but our Northwind/Northwind service. This Northwind service is nothing but our service name. Northwind is a resource root, right? So this whole is our service. So imagine this thing, this whole service, what it does is it deals with categories, customer demography, customers, right? Employees, order details, orders. So these are nothing but they can be combination of more than these are like similar to tables, right? So but we call them as entities. Okay, so these entities once again, so these entities they also have relationships like normally we in our database we have different database are tables are linked by foreign key constraints. Same ways these also have entities have relationships or association. Okay, now this service is describing these different entities, and if you look at this uh, these all are different entities, right? And now so we know that okay, this is a service, this whole is a root, this one is root. Now let's try to okay, if this is an entity, for example category, right? Since table has fields, these categories must also have some fields, right? So how do we do that is we use $metadata. Okay, so what we do is we use $metadata at the end. Dollar metadata. So what it does is it gives you the details of entities. In very layman, it just tells you what the table, not, it's not exactly a table, it's likely it can work with more than one tables also, but it gives you the structure. For example, just let's keep our focus only on category. So this category has a key field name, category ID, and it has different fields, category ID, category name, description, picture, right? So these, and its type, right? Whether what kind type it is, whether it is supposed to have null value or not, right? What is the maximum length, right? Unicode. So, and when I said there is a kind of a relationship, association, navigation, so same way this category is linked to what? Products. It is linked to Northwind model dot product categories, right? And if you look at let me just make it, so from role categories to products, this relationship is this navigation, right? So let me just make it so this let's just stay here. So we understand that, okay, in OData we have something called as, first is service route, which is nothing but this Northwind thing in URL, right? And then under this we have different entities and set which have different properties, and what we understand there is what is a key field, length, filter, association. So these kind of things we understand from here. Yes. And let's also look at one more. So customer demography. So what does customer demography has? Customer demography has customer type ID, which is of type string, customer description, which is also string. Then it is navigated, it is linked to customers. From role customer demographics to role customers. And where is this customer? So here you have the customer also, right? And same way this customer is linked to two, orders and customer demographics navigation. So and these each entities is nothing but a resource. For example, if you want to read what all customers are there, that is nothing but a resource. Okay, and so you can request a resource, you can move from one resource to another resource, you can do filtration. We'll slowly get into the hang of the things, right? So this is very clearly our URL, which is an address, where we are passing the commands that, okay, I need this service details. Metadata means is it like a structure, what is my service like, right? You see this complete. Now, so we know that these are the categories, this is the properties, right? Let's just scroll down and see that, okay, it defines the association also, right? That, okay, this association, for example, products to categories, it is categories and products. What kind of relationship? Whether you will have only one category, one product, or many products can have same category, right? And then it's principal and dependence. What is the same way? Referential constraint is same way like we have in database, right? So the same way we have these associations, right? Now if you scroll down more, it talks about how you can, for example, this category, right? This entity which is category, it has a linked entity set which is named categories. So that is like a resource for us. So in case I want to see what all categories exist in the system, right? So all I need to do is use here categories and press enter. Don't get worried about this how it looks like. So maybe let me just make it beautiful, and then you can kind of will understand in an easy way. I'll talk about this format JSON also. Okay, so for example, if I talk about categories, so we have category ID, category name, description, picture. It has some picture which has some binaries, right? And if I go down, you see there is another categories, category ID 3, confections, and this, right? So in case you want to refer to that entities, you want to read it, you would categories. Now you must be wondering, then where are those verbs, right? Where are those verbs which we have talked about? So those verbs, so when I directly use it in a URL in the browser, there is always this get request being fired. So we have a get request which is being fired, and what I am doing is get me all categories, right? And this will come soon. And meanwhile, let's just see, maybe let's explore one more, and we'll go to metadata. Metadata. So I go to N and I say, let's just look at customer demographics. So if I just say here, enter, and sadly we just have an ID updated and nothing. So maybe I just go back, find something more. Let's find some customers. Okay. So I will say I need give me all customers. So now we see there is a customers which are coming, customer ID. We have this field in the metadata, right? Is LF ALF guy, then its name, its type, name, contact name, and title, and so on. And if you look at it, it also has something like you can check the orders, you can check the autography. We'll talk about it. So this in typical, when you fire it from a browser using this way, it is a get request, and all you need to do is use an entity set name. That entity set is nothing but a resource, right? And it shows you, right? Then you must be thinking that, okay, how do I test put modify, or put is modify, we post, or delete, right? Bear with my writing. So delete, for these what we have is we have a we can download an app which is Postman. So you can go to Postman, and you can download it, and it will automatically get installed, right? And from there you can fire your different requests, right? I will put the link of this in the notes, but meanwhile let me just open Postman and show you how does it look. Okay, so this is Postman. Okay, and here, for example, if I just click here, you can have all the option what kind of a request you want. You have many more options, and so you can kind of put in what kind of a different request you want, get you want, we want to fire post. For example, let's not do anything. Let's just say that I want to fire a same get request customers, right? I will this, I will press enter, and let's see how the response is. Can you see this? The same response. You can see the response. It returns the headers also in response that okay, what kind of a thing I'm sending. I'm sending, for example, content type, what kind of a content it is, and all that stuff. Same way I can put, we'll go into get, put, post, and everything, right? But meanwhile, let's just, as of now, we understood that, okay, let's just take a break. We understand at a very high level what OData was, interaction, and then rest. Then we started our journey into dig deep into OData. So now we will slowly see how do we input, post, how do we query, how do we filter things like we do in our database. So I hope it makes sense, and let's continue learning the same. So till now we have understood that okay, this is the service route, and in case you want to request any resource, then you have to have something like uh, we have to provide the entity set name, which is nothing but a resource, and it shows you the customer's detail like customer ID, company name, contact, contract titles, and all. Right now, coming to the so we knew about these two things, that okay, One is in case we have to refer to like we refer database table in our databases. So in case of OData, we refer to resources which are nothing, which point towards entity sets and which internally points towards entities. These entities can talk to each other. And so far, this get operation, this browser is just doing a get operation, right? So and what we have to look after is how do we modify, how do we create, how do we delete, right? So for that, what we'll do is maybe let me go to OData org and reference services. I go to OData v2 read write. Yes, because we are using only read only. We'll use now read write. And from now onwards, I think it makes sense that we actually uh, do these things in from browser to to Postman, because that is where we can do different kind of operations. So just switching now to Postman. So we will try to, now before actually starting, what we will do is we will actually first have a look at the service, okay, and everything in Postman, because we will, one is we will get to, do all the operations. Second is we'll get comfortable with it. So there's the same URL. If you look at that, let me make it bigger. Yeah, that which has a OData service. This whole is the service, right? The whole service root, right? And this is a token, because since we are going to do a create, update, delete, so that's why the OData center service, this simple service, provides us this token. And all I'm doing right now is just trying to read it. And this has three entities, and these are the collections, entity sets, products, categories, and suppliers. Okay, and in case I need to know that what all fields are there in this, all I need to do is dollar metadata, and then it can tell me that okay, product is an entity which has ID, key name is ID, then there's the name, different fields like we have covered earlier in note one, right? That was only a read only. That means you can only select data. But this is read write, so you can do both, right? And it has also its relationships, associations, and even we have one function import also. So what we are trying to do is in this specific uh, part is to look at one aspect, which is like the filters. How do we, for example, previously we saw that how do we take care of, how do we select data without any where clause, right? Using those direct get queries, right? But how do we now apply filters? Because whenever we have to select some data, we are normally have our own criteria, right? So we will have a look at that, right? And we'll try to first understand that, and then maybe in our next part we'll try to create, read we have already done, but still we'll do it again, and update, delete part we'll cover. So I hope till now things make some sense, that okay, this URL is having these three things. Okay, so maybe let's just first look at products. Okay, so all I need to do is slash products and send it, right? And it shows me in different way, right? It is XML. So in order that, because I want to view this data in a JSON format, all I need to do is question mark dollar format is equal to JSON. And then if you will see that the output, which is a body, right? It is, I can see there's an ID, which is 0, name is bread, then whole grain, then rating 4. Then you have rating 3, which is for milk, rating for soda, different products are there. Now, for example, we already know that in case I need to read only one product by ID, all I need to do is, because ID is integers, all I need to do is 0, and it gives me this, right? Which is nothing but uh, uh, this breadth, right? Now let's say that what if I want to have, I want to only read by name, right? And that name should be only bread, right? So how do we do that filter, that where clause? So all I need to do is question mark dollar filter equal to, then field name, which is name, equal to, and since it is a string, so I can close it and I say bread. You can see that now I can see bread, right? And this is how we basically put a, how do we apply a kind of a where clause, right? And what if I say where rating equal, all I want to know is all products which have a rating of 3. So since it's a integer, right? So that's why I cannot use that. Now, if you see this, there is all products. For example, we can see milk, which has a rating of 3, right? This is milk. And then next is the next is winter soda, that is also having a rating 3. Then you have Havana Cola. So that's how, that is one of the way where uh, you can bring in this mm, uh, equal to, right? And then sometimes you will be like, no, because we don't always have these equal to. We have something like string where we just know something, right? We know the part of the name. In that case, you can use is another operator, which is uh, let me first see which one we want. Suppose contains okay. So in that case, you can use something like substring, okay, single quote I, comma, name equal true, right? So what it does is any field, any product which in which the name has I and it returns true, I need that, right? So the not applicable function substring of, okay, so it's a substring of, yes. So for example, if you look at milk, it has I, right? Good. If you look at ventrioles, it has I, right? Havana has I, right? And so on, right? Fruit has I, but you don't have any bread. So that's how it uses a substring. On a similar way, you have something like if you want the name to end with, right? So ends with, and then what do you want to end with? You want to end with this, let's say AD, because bread is AD, right? Or ends with D. Let's see if there is any other product whose name ends with D. So it's in this case is text is products and ends with D. D doesn't come. So if I say D, big one, other like uh, okay. For ends with, it's I did a mistake. It's like name, the field name, and then you have the letter. So you have ends with this bread, which is to no other name, right? Okay, which is okay. Now you can also have, if you have ends with, sometimes you want start with, right? Starts with. So in those cases, what you can do is again name, uh, but in this case, because you don't have, I think, something starting with D. Let's see if there is, but I don't know. Yeah, there is DVD player. See, good. So we have DVD player, which is like you can use this starts with the operation also, right? And there is also while we are checking with filter operator, right? Sometimes what you need is you want to have something like field name which is less than or which is equal which is less than 5 characters or 10 characters. So in that case you can use length, right? Length is another, and length, then you provide the field name, right? And I say anything which has a less than 5. So any product whose length is less than name length is less than 5, you return that. For example, it returns bread, which is 5, and then there is milk also less than 5, and 2 are there. Rest all have greater than. So in case I use in place of LT, I use TT, which is greater than. then in that case it will be returning me wind soda and the rest of the world, which is fruit punch and all. Yeah. Okay. So this is like in where clause you can have different stuff, right? But let's say, because here it is like I'm just comparing it with SQL, because whatever you need it in where clause, similar kind of where clause you can pass in dollar filter. Now, what about, let's just remove it, and what about because it is fetching all the fields, right? If you look at dollar format JSON. If you look at this, it is fetching all the field name, description, and all that stuff, right? What if I want to, I don't want to get all these fields. What I want is some fields, let's say name and description or rating. So in that case, we have another in place of dollar filter, we can use select. So it's now we are moved from the select part. We earlier dealt with the where clause. Now we are dealing with what fields you want to select. So if I want to say select is equal to name, comma, description. Okay. So what it does is it only gets me let me add a, I've added here a, a format. I want the format data to be JSON. So you look here, ampersand dollar format JSON. Now you can see only name and bread is being name and description is being fetched. And if I suppose I want to have rating, so I can have something like rating. So it tells everything. So now you know how to select fields and how to use a where clause, right? And in case sometimes you want to select all fields, what do we do is select star. So we can do the same, select star, and it gets us all the fields. Yeah. Okay. So now we know we understood filter, we understood select. Let's have something like sometimes we want to know how many records exist. It is like a select count star. So for that also it has mapped another operator for us, which is select dollar count, right? So you can just note here instead of question mark, I'm directly using slash dollar count, and it tells me nine. There are 9 total products which exist. Okay, so we can use dollar count with it, right? Now, let's say that mm, I want to have only, because sometimes we say that select up to 5 rows, right? So we give it a count, right? So how do we do it here? So for that also, what OData has done is it has provided us another operator, which is we can say dollar top is equal to 5, right? And I can have and dollar format is equal to JSON. Let's make it look simple. So 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's it. So total 5 records are returned. And if I say uh, top 9, then it returns me everything. If we scroll down, 7. So it returns 9 or 8, whatever records are there. 8 because it starts from 0. So you have total 9 records. But sometimes we don't want that. We don't want what do we say? We don't want something like to read all records. We want as kind of a paging, right? So in that case, what OData standard has done is it has provided us with the skip option. Okay, so what you can do is I say, let's say I need dollar top 4 and dollar skip. The skip, I will say here I have to have and I will say dollar skip is equal to. So first 2 records will be skipped and next 4 it will send me. So 0 and 1 are skipped. It is from starting from 2. So till now, what we actually, if we look at is what we understood is we talked about. Let's just talk about the filter options, which is we talked about filter. we talked about which field, which is by dollar select, top five records, which is by dollar top, skip to the next five or four, that is skip. Then we talked about dollar count, which is how many records are there. But then, if you remember, we also had uh, this in our select clause. So we fields were in order by and group by clause. Same way we can have it here, which is like we can have. We'll see what OData stand this protocol has provided us for making sure our data is ordered in a particular. So let's say we want this to be ordered by price. So I'm just copying this price, and all I need to do is and is already there. I'll say and uh, dollar order by is equal to price. So now you see it is 18.8 and 19.9 and 20.9. By default it is ascending. So if you look at this, let's also add something. Let's add all everything whatever we know and bring here. So if I say dollar select is equal to ID name and description and price. So I want to select these fields. I will skip the first record, the next four, order by price, and then let's see what is there. So I have ID, name, description, and this is ordered by price, right? Now let's say this is pink, I, Havina, I, Vint, I, cranberry juice. So everything has it, I. I'm just trying to, bring in the filter also. So let's say I want price which is greater than 19. So how do we do that is we will say here dollar filter equal to price greater than 19, then another and, right? And I say send. So because greater than is GT here, we have to use that naming convention. So you see 920.8, 22.99, and then 35.88, 1068. So first it fetches everything which is greater than 19. Then it skips the first two record, it orders them, and then skip those records because top four do, right, and skip two first, skip two, and then top four, and then order by zero. So select also. So you see we have used all the combinations. So this is what different filter operations we can use in our API calls which we're going to make. So this is it about our filter operations. And our next chapter we will talk about the last and the most important thing which we have, last but not the least, but still very important is about the how do we create, how do we read, how read we have done, create, update, and delete in OData. Okay, so now what we will do is that we will, because we have already explored the query options with so many different options, select, filters, and everything. I think it makes sense to, understand how do we do a modification, creation, and delete. So for this, what I'll do is I'll just copy this, maybe um, just this, and let's 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 see what exists in categories. Okay, and and maybe let me just have JSON for the timing. So we have three categories, 0, 1, 2, 2, three categories. Okay, one is food, beverages, and electronics, right? So what we'll do is we'll try to see how do we create one, right? So for that, what I will do is, because you need to send a data in particular format. For that format, I'll just copy this, okay? And then, because when you want to create, you say post, and then you go here and you say body, right? and you say you want to add a raw data, which is nothing but JSON, and then you remove unwanted part. For example, this is not we have, and this also because we don't have it want to assign it to any product as of now. So I will say I will create one category number 3, okay, and let's call it new food category. Okay, so and just meanwhile let me just copy this and keep it here so that you can see the difference. So get is still fetching is 0, 1 and 2, not nothing ours, but here we have our ID. This is invalid 1 because it has a comma, and I will remove it and bring it to this is okay now, right? And let me just, yeah, now it's a bit more readable and all. So now you can see new food category. This it already has a token, so I can directly pass the body to it, and then I just say this token gives it the authorization, and all I need to do is send, and my fingers crossed. Yeah, so it is there's new food category. If the response is 201, it is okay, we are good. Now if I go here and I make a get request for same categories, then you see 0, 1, 3. Here it is, new food category, right? So post operation does the creation, right? And now, for example, and this token is very important for, this is for testing purpose, that using the same token it persists and then it gets, otherwise else it doesn't. So let's say I want to modify it. So what I'll do is new food category 1 to 1, but for in case you need to modify it, there's a new format. So you have to first make it here 3, right? That ID is 3. This is the resource, third one. And whose name I want to change 1 to 1. It is not a post, it is a put request. And I say send. 204 is also okay. Green is good. Green is good. So now we have modified it to 1 to 1. Let me just see what comes here. 1 to 1. Very good. So we are very good, right? We are all good. And what was sent also, what is in header and test, all you can see here. So this is more on a test side. You can learn what all is being done. Now coming to, we have done creation of categories. I did not choose product because there were too many fields. So I specifically choose category, and category has less field. So we have now created, you have updated. Now time for deletion. So all I say is delete operation, and I say send, right? It is again green, which is good. Green is all good. If I go here and we have 0, 1, 2, nothing more. And even if you want, you can want use dollar count, you get 3 because we added fourth one, we deleted one. So I think you now have a fair bit idea of how do we kind of do selects, where close, order by, creation, updation, and deletion. Uh, I think I forgot one thing. Let me just quickly cover that also because that is also important. So what if we have 3 categories, 0, 1, and 2, right? But if you look at it, has its related products, but those are different. And you can refer them by using this, right? The OData category is 1. Whatever category 1 products are there, you can travel that. But what if you want to know those products right now? So what you can do is you can go here and use dollar $expand, and I say products. Okay. And and so now, if you look at it, it says ID 0, name 0, products. Now it is not deferred. These are available right now that you have ID, name, this, and this category also. This is vice versa link. Now you can also have it as category also. And then supplier, which is also deferred. Same way, so you can see all the products which are available in a category. So I think just to summarize, we have covered up the different post, put, and create, delete, and different filter options. We understood how this client server works, how it this what OData is, how it is linked to an architecture style name list. So I think we have covered a fair bit of introduction about OData. So before I wrap up this course, I would like to thank you for making it to the end, and I hope you are able to understand it. And the discussion doesn't stop here, so we need to take it to the next level. So you can think about developing your own APIs, whether in using an Node.js one, using SAP or whatever technology you are comfortable with. But important is to, because for the timing in this, since it was an introduction, we have only explored and understood how it works, but we have not gone into the details of how do we create such OData APIs, right? So that's a talk for maybe another course, another one. Thanks for watching, and I hope you understand and you will take it forward from here. Thank you. Keep learning, keep sharing.